Living green or sustainably is about more than saving on your electric bill and doing your part to protect natural resources. It is about a safer and healthier life for you and your family without sacrificing style, quality, or budget. This is a movement to provide all of us with clean air to breathe and water to drink, safe, healthy food to eat and places to live, and energy to run the places where we live, learn, play, and work. The Everyday Green Home Podcast helps you get the value of green for you, your family, and your community. Whether it's green homes, green living, or the people who make it happen, join me, Marla Esser Close, to learn how green and sustainability practices and products work for you and our world. Welcome to the Everyday Green Home Podcast.
Love it.
This is Marla, the Green Home Coach, and I am super excited to have Sharon Rowe with EcoBags coming back on the podcast. How are you today?
I'm okay. I'm actually okay. The sun came out today, and that makes a world of difference.
Not the truth. So just to kind of give everybody an anchor point, we are recording this in April. So we are in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yes, we are.
You're in New York, right? But not New York City.
Yeah, I'm just north of New York City along in the Hudson Valley. I'm about 35 miles from Midtown, and right now about less than 20 miles from what's happening in the Bronx and all those hospitals. But I'm not in an urban area. I'm in a suburban/rural area. So, I am surrounded by parkland and about 400 acres. So I'm sort of tucked away. I used to be in the village of Ossining. We lived for 20 years, and we just last April moved to this house that's sort of in the middle of everywhere, but nowhere at the same time. You know what I'm saying? To us, it felt like, oh my God, it's in the middle of nowhere, but I can be in a store. I could be at a grocery store in 5 minutes.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's kind of this conundrum because higher density living is in many ways more sustainable because we don't use as many resources.
Right.
But man, right now it's been it's been a real hard challenge with the pandemic.
A huge challenge. I have friends and relatives who are all sheltering in space in 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, and some of them have 2-year-olds, and
that's hard.
That's hard. And I can go for a walk and see no one.
Yeah, we can too.
For an hour.
Yeah.
Hour and a half. I can go in the backwoods behind my house. There's lots of woods. We did a 4-mile walk around the neighborhood the other day. We hardly saw anybody, but they can't. They step out onto the street in Queens and everybody's everywhere. So it's a huge challenge. It's definitely testing everybody, but it's also creating a huge amount of community. But nobody really wants this to go on forever.
I know. It's a challenge and it's a test in some ways for all of our sanities, I guess, but we don't know when the end is in sight. And we all are expecting that we're going to have to kind of tiptoe back into being together and gatherings. And as you and I were talking offline, this is definitely going to be a time of moving forward, not going back to the way things, quote unquote, were.
Yeah, I think this is going to lead to, a lot of cultural shifts, community shifts. I am hoping, but not necessarily hopeful, for structural shifts in terms of larger business and governmental structures.
Yeah.
A lot more breakdown in the future, unfortunately, for anything that's tax reliant. So municipalities.
Yeah.
I would hope that at the federal, not even local level, that there could be something like the green, like a WPA project, but a green WPA project to really sink money into our infrastructure.
I was going to say infrastructure desperately needs it.
It's all about infrastructure. Talk about creating jobs that would be positive. There's so much ailing. There's got to be a move, I think, away from the way things are being shoved right now by the party that has so much control. That's got to go towards selflessness versus selfishness. And we have to stop playing people off each other.
Oh, isn't that the truth? We have a big problem. We just need to put it in front of us collectively. And that's what we all need to be working on.
Yeah. And I think we need to get very involved politically, especially in states where it matters.
And this could be an interesting year with the election and all of this.
Really interesting.
In our faces.
Yeah. And I think a lot of smarter people need to step up, because even with everything that's been brought forward with all these great aid packages and whatnot, since I'm in the business community, not a whole lot of people are seeing a whole lot. There's a whole lot of confusion.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's a lot of time wasted, and I don't think it's going to necessarily solve any problems. It's more like a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't thought through well enough. And we'll see who survives it. I mean, I'm also wondering when's the next time anybody's going to get on an airplane? When's the next time anybody's going to go to feel comfortable to go to a local restaurant?
Or on a cruise.
And why are we bailing out cruises? I'm sorry. It's a nice to have, not a need to have. There's going to be a focus on need to have versus nice to have.
And many of them aren't even incorporated here in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And what about all the larger organizations, or I should say businesses, that are not paying their fair share in taxes because of all the loopholes that are afforded them? I mean, this is a whole shakedown. And unfortunately, it's hitting Main Street is the most vulnerable.
Yeah. It is an unprecedented time that we are, I mean, by all means, making history in ways that none of us ever really could even dream about in our wildest dreams.
And it's the world. It's not even Oklahoma City and New York City. It's the whole freaking world.
So Seth Godin I get his blog, and he said, this is a big, big boat that we are all in it together. And it is. I mean, and I paraphrased a little bit because I don't have his quote right in front of me. But when else can you think of anything in history that all of us were going through something together and communicate that we were all going through it together?
Yeah, maybe World War II. That was before my time.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the closest. I've seen a lot of parallels drawn with World War II.
Yeah, I mean, because the country got behind it, like especially there was the war effort, there was this. I mean, but there were still a lot of divisions. I mean, a lot gets painted in history books as if it were all unified. We know it wasn't, when you look back, but there's so many divisions now, but there's a lot of cohesiveness happening too. I mean, like the environmental community is really saying, hey, we got to work together, not that they didn't say we have to work together before.
Right.
But it's even more important now because we have to stand up to things that are not true and are harmful and do not benefit more people. I mean, not just more people. I just was reading from Greenpeace in terms of the bleaching of the
coral reefs.
Yeah, the coral reefs. I'm sorry. No. So how do we communicate no? It's in everybody's daily actions of how you choose to do or not to do.
And now we're seeing, I mean, very quickly, we've seen if we take the stress off, nature heals herself very quickly.
Yeah. We don't have to save the earth. We have to save our own ass. That's actually a paraphrase from, a really wonderful comedian whose name probably is just blowing up my brain right now. I have coronavirus brain. I don't remember things until 2 days later, and I think it was a month ago. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. Every day it feels like a week. It's crazy.
It's like the vacation I never wanted.
Yeah, that's the truth.
Although, I mean, it's really nice. We're going for long walks every day, long walks, walking the dog. Dog is like, I don't want to walk anymore. Please, I just want to rest.
Are you baking? Everybody I know is baking.
No, I'm not much of a baker, but I did make hand-pulled Chinese noodles the other day.
Ooh.
And I think I'm going to use the same recipe, which is so simple, to do some sort of dumplings for tomorrow. My husband always bakes bread. So we've always been an ingredients household.
Yeah.
In fact, pre-pandemic craziness, I said to him, just go to the store and buy lots of stuff so that we have backup. So against our nature and what we do on a regular basis, he basically filled our downstairs mini freezer thingy with like ready-made things as a just in case the ingredients weren't available. And I think I've had one thing so far, which was a pot pie, because I actually got sick. And I don't know if I had COVID or not, but I got taken down by something really hard for about 5 days.
Ooh, you didn't tell me that.
Yeah. And so, but it was against our nature because we only buy ingredients.
Yeah, we've been doing some of each with Scott being in and out of the hospital so much over the past year and a half.
Yeah. And I think sometimes you need a backup too. You just don't want to cook and you say, hey, there's that lasagna in the basement. You just need to eat it.
Well, the craziest thing is that what we've kind of, theorized that happened is people that normally ate, throw together meals or already prepared meals or ate out. Mm-hmm. Now they had to cook at home. And a lot of them likely didn't have basic staples.
Like I have a full cabinet of spices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, us too.
I have 4 different kinds of paprika, ranging from hot to mild to smoke, because I like that stuff. But you're right.
Right. We're like that with olive oils. We probably have 4 different flavors of olive oils and 3 or 4 vinegars.
I used a hot chili oil the other night on those noodles.
Oh, gosh, you're making me hungry.
It was so good. But I feel very fortunate that we're cooks, we're home cooks, and we've been practicing cooking for years and love it, even though it can get pretty tiring when you actually cannot go out anywhere. And we don't usually go out that much anyway. But that there are people who not only don't know how to cook or can't cook or don't have the supplies, they don't have income to buy food.
I saw an article yesterday.
That to me is so frightening.
They plowed under this huge field of onions because they couldn't get them anywhere.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense. They couldn't get them anywhere because they don't have the distribution network set up to do that. I'm just going to theorize they don't have the social networking set up.
I agree.
To reach out and say, hey, come get some.
And how many food pantries are just done? They need food. A lot of them I've been reading about have maybe 2 weeks supply identified.
Right. And so where were these onions plowed under? I mean, there could have been like 1,000 people within 10 miles who would come and get some.
I know. I don't understand that.
We have a local farm market here, and it's very, very local, that part of their business was B2B. So they were selling to local restaurants. And the minute local restaurants closed, they immediately and very smartly, because they must have done it, I guess, with a lot of other information from other farms, they created a sort of CSA, so community supported agriculture. But instead of doing the old model, which is you spend, you put $500 up front and every week you go and get, 2 carrots, 1 onion, half a thing of garlic. I mean, we used to get this weird mashup of like, what am I going to do with this? I'm a cook, but I got to feed 4 people. But so instead of that, they use a debit model. So basically they pre-funded their loss of business, or I should say refunded their loss of business by people prepaying. And then every time we pick up groceries from them, which is all fresh off the farm, it's a debit.
That's a really good idea.
They didn't have to take a loan.
Yeah.
So it was like, there's smart ways to do it, but they're tiny.
That's the whole thing of your book, right?
Right. You can be a lot more nimble when you're tiny.
So tell us a little bit about your book, because I love tiny magic.
The magic of tiny business is all about being nimble and bootstrapping.
Which we need right now.
Being nimble and bootstrapping. And, it comes down to something really basic, which my husband and I were talking about yesterday, which is spend less than you make. That's it.
And it's a challenge for a lot of people because they just don't make enough. But we also have an awful lot that are spending a lot.
But there's always been that gap.
Yeah.
I'm not going to reach into anybody's pocketbook and say what you shouldn't spend on. But if you're that tight on a monthly basis, I just know when we were there years ago, when we were first married, especially, we didn't, let's say, have cable. Actually, we don't have cable now anyway. We haven't had it for like 20 years. We didn't have those little extras. We had that, you get them or use them or have them or buy them, but like once a month, not once a week. It's just a shift. It's not about deprivation. It's about conservation.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And so then it becomes kind of like when I was growing up, which was in the 60s and 70s, which is you didn't get new clothes all the time.
Oh my gosh, I had 2 little sisters and they never got new clothes. They got all the hand-me-downs.
Yeah, well, I was the oldest, so I always got new clothes. But,
me too.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. So back to school, right? That was new clothes, but like 2 or 3 outfits.
Yeah.
And then if you needed a new winter coat, what I'm saying? It wasn't on an ongoing basis.
I still have far fewer clothes. Of course, I have 3 different sizes, but I'm not out as much. I work at home, so my wardrobe has changed significantly. And I'm hoping a few of those classic suits are still in style. So when I need to go out and do presentations and stuff, I have something to wear.
I bet you, I was just thinking those shoulder pads from the olden days would make really good face masks.
That's a whole new thought.
So the idea of tiny business is just staying true to what you really need, what's essential, and not running after or engaging with the things that are not essential.
I want to talk a little bit more about your book. And then you and I offline, we're talking about some of the ideas that kind of, I guess, grow out of that book about things that we can do from a business perspective and each of us can do as we start rolling out of this pandemic and things to think about. So let's take a real quick break and we'll be right back. Hey, this is Marla Close, the Green Home Coach, and I am the author of Living Green Effortlessly, Simple Choices for a Better Home. And in this book, besides talking about a bunch of stuff about green and sustainability products and practices you can easily take in your home, also talk about home maintenance and how important this is to having a home that serves you rather than you serving it. Seasonal home maintenance checklists are a big part of this, and I teamed up with colleague Tina Gleisner from Home Tips for Women to use her maintenance checklist, actually included in the book, starting on page 96. And if you have the book, look them up. But I wanted to give you a brief excerpt from the book to get you excited about why home maintenance checklists, I know that doesn't sound very exciting, but why they are so important. So, maintaining a home is actually a 3-part ongoing process: inspect, maintain, and update. To help you keep track of what you've done and plan to do, make notes on the checklist. First, inspect. If you've only got an hour to spare, pick one exterior side of the house or one room inside to inspect. Note the date you did this on the checklist and flag items needing maintenance or repairs so you can schedule time or make a list for your handyman or handywoman. Second, maintain. Keep your home safe, such as smoke detector batteries. Keep your home energy efficient, like furnace air filters, and prolong the useful life of many home features, like caulking bathroom tile. Write it down when you complete a task, keeps you from guessing later on. And third, update. Take advantage of improved materials and fixtures, upgrade to new building codes, and evaluate when it makes more sense to make an improvement rather than repair, such as replacing a bathroom floor rather than repairing the grout. Check out the book or give me a holler and I'll hook you up online to get the maintenance checklist for yourself. If you'd like to have the entire book, please go to livinggreenbook.com for a multitude of ways to purchase it for yourself. Thanks again. This is Marla, the Green Home Coach. So back on the Everyday Green Home podcast, chatting with Sharon, and your book is, it's been a while since I've read it, but The Magic of Tiny Business is so appropriate right now because small businesses are really feeling the heat right now with this pandemic. And I'm already online, so that not a lot changed for me. But for a lot of people, my next door neighbors are restaurant owners and they've had to adapt really quickly. And people relying, like, we have a neighborhood Facebook page and they started putting out family meals on the neighborhood Facebook page and getting friends and family to share it. And that's helped. But it's, everyone is just having to make changes so fast. So how does that relate in with your book and everything?
Well, that's about being nimble, I guess, and just doing what's necessary and not anything extra. And right now for small business, it's really just about keeping the cash flowing.
Yeah.
And that means getting in as much as you can in the front end and letting go of as little as you can on the back end without shorting suppliers. It's all about relationships, right? We're all part of the same ecosystem. Everybody's doing it, from even the big companies, American Express, that's extending payments on, we put a lot of those charges on those cards and stuff, big charges like UPS, down to the warehouse, who just cut us a break because they don't want us to go out of business. Nobody wants anybody to go out of business. We all want to stay in it together. And the only way we can do it is if, depending on your bandwidth, if you have more or less, that's how you extend.
Yeah. And
you work with each other and you talk to each other. And people who are less able to do so, you have to meet them where they are. And if they're not willing to play, they may lose their place in line.
That's a good point. I've seen a lot of this firsthand working with my affiliate partner.
Yeah.
On the green cleaners and hand sanitizers. And wow, she's had to make so many decisions, and I've just been helping her research and find stuff and ingredients and sourcing things. But oh my gosh, you're right. You have to figure out how to be nimble to just do what you need to do. And that's one of the things that I've really valued being able to do with her is we've both been able to brainstorm about our respective sides of the business. And that really helps to have somebody to brainstorm with that sees things from a different perspective.
Yeah, business is a lot of micro decisions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what business is. It's problem solving, right? What it basically comes down to is it's problem solving and maintaining your margins. You got to maintain your margins, and you have to know what your margins are. So she probably started up and didn't really know what her margins were because she's in a fluctuating environment.
That may be.
I know that payroll is X percentage of gross revenue, and that gross profit is X percent, has to be maintained at X percent of gross profit in order to reach net profit, which is the amount that's needed to replenish, goods and services.
Yeah.
And any one of those changes, it all has to adjust in accordance with the other. Otherwise, it's kind of like you live in a big house because you got 12 people in your family, and then all of a sudden, you don't need the big house anymore. And you can't support all those people in the house. So actually the metaphor I've been using mostly, and it goes along with tiny business as well, although I've switched it to like a sailing metaphor. And I'm actually not a very good sailor. This is like the extent of my sailing experience, even though my son has a sailboat, is that when times get tough, you have to trim your sails.
Yeah.
You have to pull them in as tight as possible. At first, it may seem like this is not comfortable. This is way too conservative. I'm pulling in too much. And you might get pushback from employees and from family and friends. But from my perspective, I'm pulling the sails in as tight as possible so that I can save the boat, because the boat ultimately is what's going to carry everybody across the water.
Gotcha.
It's the same thing as, airplanes. Put your own air mask on first.
On first, yeah. Can't help anybody else if you're not around.
It's actually not a selfish move. It's a selfless move, because I'm trying to create the thing that's going to weather the storm so that it can be rejuvenated. If I didn't cut everybody loose really quickly and didn't start cutting back on or reorganizing all the different kind of payments with vendors and talking to people, but it's all about communication. It's not about stiffing anybody. It's about picking up the phone and making those really hard phone calls.
Yeah.
And then working together. And it builds relationships. You just hope that when you get through the other end of this, whatever it is, projections are it might even come back in January, February.
Yeah.
Is that, there's someone to play with.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yeah.
And that's part of the tiny business thing too, is who do you want to play with? This is when you get to decide. You don't have to play with the people you don't want to play with anymore, but you get to choose the people that you want to play with.
Yeah.
And you get to choose the products that are made by people that you want to play with.
Yep. I agree with that.
Yeah. So it's kind of cool.
And that's a lot of what I've been able to build with the online shop. It's products that I use, products that I trust, people that I know like you that are creators of the products that are out there, and products that just really exude the values that I believe in, and then that I know other people that I talk to believe in. So a place to go for those, and it's a good way to walk your talk.
Yeah. And it's nobody's fault that anything went in the other direction. There's a lot of fault out there, but in terms of the everyday worker person.
Yeah.
But you get, the way the economy was set up and the way our culture was set up is you start piling on your own obligations when you're attached to maybe a paycheck entity or a career entity. And then you don't feel like you can make a shift because you've got all these obligations. And obligations might be ones that you love, like family and children and education costs and housing, all these things. And maybe you're not part of the larger decisions that are being made. So you just make concession after concession. We all sort of want to have or manage or exercise some level of not so much control, but curating where and how we go. And you lose pieces of that. I feel it even when I can't buy boxed goods, which is why it was so hard when my husband filled the freezer with some, pre-pandemic. It's just, I can't buy packaged goods. But in this pandemic, almost everything's packaged.
Right. There are trade-offs that have to sometimes be made. And
yeah. And it's for now. It's not forever.
It's not forever. And I've always been a big believer in following the 80-20 rule. And I've always been a big believer in celebrating what people can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm all about 80-20.
And give yourself some grace, okay?
Yeah.
There's all these great things that you can do to have a better, safer, healthier home and lifestyle. But if you can't do them 100% of the time, that's not worth beating yourself up. And that's true in our homes, our businesses, our lives.
That's because being perfect is highly overrated.
Well, yeah, being done is better than perfect. So
exactly. It's like
that was one of my business coaches a few years back.
It's like, it's like we were talking before about, all the fear mongering that's going on about, bringing your own bags to the store, reusable bags as opposed to single-use plastic bags. Well, there was so much fear mongering, completely not supported by scientific fact at all, as is coming out in really good publications like NPR and the Washington Post and the New York Times, and still industry that wants single-use plastic bags to be seen as the safer choice are pushing it. Those of us who know that a washable, porous, reusable bag is not the demon, is not the petri dish for germs. In this time, we need to respect the retailers who are saying, look, we can't deal with this now. This is just one more thing. Please let us wrap our brains around the fact that we have to put our cashiers behind, a shield.
Right.
And that everybody needs to be safe, which is part of that 20% that I'm not comfortable with. But right now, either I have to go with what those who are in those positions are asking of me, or I need to find an alternate route, which is maybe I put all the groceries, although I have not been shopping, my husband has been, in the grocery cart and wheel it to my car and put the darn things in the bags at the car. What difference does it make?
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And that's been so hard on me because I have this crazy collection of bags that I've, gotten from all kinds of events and stuff over the years, but some of them aren't washable. And the ones that are definitely, those I'd be fine because I'd be like you. I'd come home, throw them in the washing machine. I think you're right that, people don't have the space for one more decision and what's already a very chaotic experience compared to what it used to be.
Right. And fear mongering. There is a lot of fear because it's a terrible, awful virus that is ripping through communities and killing people. I'm in New York, so we're in the middle of it.
You are.
I mean, I'm actually just north of the middle of it, but we know people who know people. It's like it's close.
Yeah, I didn't know anybody till last week that had COVID.
And we know people who in different communities, like musician communities that we're part of. And it's awful. But it doesn't mean that you have to live on that level of fear. But you have to respect the people who are doing their best to administer and help and be part of a solution, not to get in their way. It's like basically, stay at home means stay at home.
Right.
It doesn't mean, whatever.
5 myths of green homes are 5 things that you probably believe about green homes that may be costing you thousands of dollars. Which myth do you hear the most? Get your copy of 5 Myths at greenhomecoach.com and click on the button for 5 Myths of Green Homes. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Green Home Coach and let me know the green home myth you hear the most. I'll also share tips, products, and resources. Be sure to download your copy of 5 Myths of Green Homes now and then check back to learn more. So let's talk a little bit about as we start to slowly come out of this. I mean, we've seen that with less human impact on nature, a lot of things in nature have bounced back pretty quickly. So there's a lot of talk in the community right now about how we move forward from this point and not go back. Can't go backwards anyway, right? But what kind of things do you see that we should take into consideration when we move forward from our shelter in place and stay at homes? And as we get back out into the bigger world, how do we do this so we create an environment that is better and healthier?
Well, I think number one is we don't snap back to what was.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty clear the negative impacts of some industries and corporations and government. We can see the negatives. So let's focus on structurally shifting that, whatever that means, either it's through a vote or an engagement in politics, even at a very local level, because I think a lot can happen at the local level.
True.
I think if we come out of this with, loving to cook more, making noodles, just keep doing that because I could do an entire cookbook or podcast on how to make a meal for 2 people for under a couple dollars.
Nice.
On a regular basis. In fact, I worked at a camp years ago as the director, and I think we fed everybody for like $1 a meal.
Nice.
But but it has to do with volume, obviously.
Yeah, that helps.
I'm a really good bean person. So that cooking with real food, for those people who have access to real food, not everybody has access to real food. I think another thing is that really understanding and supporting local business, over the big box stores as much as possible, because that's where it's vibrant. That's where community is, in your local coffee shop, your bakery, your bar, your brewery,
farmers markets.
Even just walking down a healthy main street. You don't have shops open, you're not going to have a healthy main street.
And we're seeing a lot of bartering or trading going on in our neighborhood. People doing porch swaps or putting items on porches and loaning things out. I hope that continues. That's the kind of neighborhood you want to be in.
Oh, that's a huge positive. Yeah. Well, we actually have a Facebook group from our old neighborhood where it's a free swap. And so people just put what they don't want, and people say, I'll take that chair and I'll take this and that. And we actually put all the furniture, a lot of the furniture on our back porch came from stuff like that. I never understood why everybody has to have their own lawnmower.
I know.
In fact, we didn't. We made a garden in our front yard at our old house. We didn't have to mow the lawn. All of that's all positive. But I think a lot of this is really, really structural. What if like once a week, not on a Saturday or Sunday, it was a no drive day?
Yeah.
A stay at home day or a work from home day. I don't know.
Well, and how many businesses have now figured out that guess what? You can do work at home. It works.
Yeah. Oh, there's a ton. Well, that's going to have a huge impact on office space.
Yeah.
And there's going to be and with income shrinking, taxes, we've already gotten a notice from our county legislator that they're reviewing property tax relief. Property taxes slide, municipal services slide, hiring slides. It's not long before pensions are hit.
Yeah.
This is a complete reorganization.
Oh, it affects everything. Yeah.
I mean, what are pensions except for promises?
Yeah.
It's so big, which is when I woke up after the hit and I realized I couldn't catch all the balls. I kind of came out of it and said, and it was kind of as the trees were sort of getting some blooms on them too. It's like, yeah, this is not to be controlled. This is like just stay in a ready, healthy position and see when to reengage and if to reengage.
Good point.
I mean, maybe the engagement looks different.
Well, we've talked about that, just even with my husband's situation. Because he's still on disability, and thank goodness he was not out in the workforce right now. He's not recovered enough to have been out in the workforce yet.
So he would have had, yeah.
So we're just very grateful that we had that capability to protect him.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that we've become very grateful for that could have been seen as a downside or that could have been taken for granted. And I think a lot of us, I'm talking to an awful lot of friends and family that have become very grateful for the little things in their lives. Very grateful for the family time. Yes, my son is not going to get a graduation ceremony like he planned. I didn't get my last mother-son weekend with him in college. That stinks. But I know, right now he's healthy and he's working his best to be healthy. I know he's got great prospects, and I'm so grateful for that. I think all of us are in this position of a shift, and maybe that's part of the nimbleness that you were talking about.
Well, and to make business, whatever business, whether it's your business of your life or the business of your financial life only, is to make it about the we as opposed to the me. I think we've seen enough of the brands and businesses that step on people as opposed to the ones that honestly uplift and support.
Yeah, we want to do business with people that really share our values.
And that's why I say, let's play with each other. Because it's doing business, there's an exchange, but let's play. There's a lightness to it. But there's a lot of fallout. I mean, it's a huge shift. And what we don't want to do is leave a huge population behind. So how do we manage that?
There's a lot. And there's a lot of opportunities for people to engage as we come out of this. And one of the beautiful things about technology and the fact that we can do this podcast is that we are continuing to brainstorm and to engage and to do business with all this technology. And it's opening up completely new ways of thinking on a larger scale and thinking on a smaller scale. Because years ago when I worked for IBM, there was talk about linking together lots and lots of PCs, personal computers, to basically become a supercomputer, to take all those little bits of computing power and to amass them into the equivalent of a supercomputer. And I'm like, that almost feels like what's happening right now. All little bits of thought, all amassing.
I live right near IBM here, the major headquarters.
Yeah, you're real close to headquarters.
Yeah. Didn't know that. We're really, my uncle worked for IBM for like 40 years up in Poughkeepsie.
Yep. I actually never made it to Poughkeepsie. I made it to White Plains.
There you go. Really close. Here's something though, too. When there's the will, there's the way. Our government came up with this fakakta, that's a Yiddish word, stimulus plan. We haven't been able to get money for a health plan for years. There's not enough money. And then look what comes up out of...
We'll be paying it back forever.
Look what we can do. Well, no, it's all just going to go into inflation and they're going to just print more money.
Yeah. But you do what you got to do. The first item for all of us is to save lives and help save each other and to keep the people that are on the front lines uplifted as much as we can.
Have you been watching what's going on in New York City? Because I didn't know that not everybody knows it.
It's been a couple days.
Well, every night at 7:00, people go out their windows and yell and scream and clank pots and wahoo. And I mean, it's just like the whole city erupts in a sort of cathartic thank you.
It gives me goosebumps.
Yeah.
No, it's a big deal. Yeah, my son-in-law's in medical residency and it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, who's really on the front line? Is it our politicians? No. It's doctors and teachers and it's people, it's even the garbage men. It's like people who...
The delivery people, the nurses, the grocery store workers.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're keeping us going. I'm incredibly grateful to them for making us be able to be home and be safe and to protect other people as well.
Right. And when all this falls apart financially, should the burden fall to them? No.
They should be protected.
They need to be, and supported. And there's plenty of money to go around. It's just not equally managed. And I'm not saying bleed higher net worth businesses or individuals. Just reevaluate the equations that are being used carefully and understand how to implement that and defend it. And if you are a US-based company and you're parked overseas, maybe you're taxed at a double rate. You know what I'm saying? Disincentivize.
We need to all do our part.
Exactly.
And that's where it really matters.
Yep. We need laws that will enforce that. And then we need smart people to implement. Let's just, hats off to the smart people who are still talking and being heard.
And there's a lot of them, thank goodness.
There's a lot of them, thank you, and they're cutting through the noise.
Well, Sharon, I can't tell you how much I have enjoyed the opportunity to reconnect and to really take your book and put it in the context of what's going on. And if anybody would like to get your book, I will put a link on it, the show notes, so that people can get it for themselves. And I'll also put some links to your products, EcoBags, which we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, I should talk to you about getting some on your website. We should talk about that because produce bags are actually the next evolution in terms of just...
I will check. I got to see if I've added any new ones right now.
Yeah. Plastic doesn't keep everything safer. This is not to say that you shouldn't have single-use plastics in a medical environment. There's a place for everything.
I agree.
Wow. We covered a lot.
I hope we get to do this again before a year passes, so I'll work harder on that.
Yeah, me too. Well, I didn't know that all you'd gone through, so I'm glad we had an opportunity to connect.
We persevere, become nimble.
Yeah, well, what else are we going to do? Every time you wake up and you're still breathing, you're like, oh, I'm here.
Good day.
Good day. Now what?
Well, thank you again. Hats off.
Okay, thank you.
Y'all stay safe. And to all of our listeners out there, take care and stay safe.
Yep, stay safe, stay sane.
Yes, ma'am. Take care, y'all. That wraps this episode of the Everyday Green Home Podcast. Ready to use what you learned? Get the show notes with all the resources mentioned in this episode. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening and for leaving a review. And remember that living a little better and greener is easier than you think.